Welcome to the AgEmerge podcast, brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. Your farming challenges are unique, so your practices should be too. We're here to share emerging ideas, build connections, and provoke conversation.
Get ready to improve your soil, your crops, your livestock, and your family's livelihood. I'm your producer, Kim Chase.
And I'm your host, Monty Bottens. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening. Today we're digging into the power of regenerative farming, enterprise stacking, and community-driven agriculture with our guest, Lydia Dresbach. Lydia's story is a testament to rethinking what's possible on the farm, from growing heritage grains and running agritourism events to creating a thriving ecosystem of many enterprises. Get ready to be inspired by her vision for stewardship, her dedication to community, and her commitment to crafting a future where farming is sustainable, profitable, and deeply connected to the people it serves. Let's jump right in.
Well, welcome everyone to this episode of the AgEmerge podcast. I'm joined by Lydia Dresbach today. Welcome, Lydia. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Things are going well here.
Well, I had an opportunity to swing by your place last winter, I believe it was, or early spring, something like that, and to see. Oftentimes, I hear speakers speak at events, and I kind of wonder, okay, is this the real thing? You know, you kind of trust but verify. I stopped by, and sure enough, you guys are doing a lot of things. So, tell us. I like to start every episode with folks telling us their story. You know, kind of your background. What got you to where you are today, and kind of understand your why you do what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Lydia, and I farm on our family's farm. So we're a regenerative farm, and we kind of took the approach of stacking enterprises. So I went away to college. I have a degree in elementary education and ministry, so a dual degree there. Was not planning on farming. However, when I graduated, my grandparents asked me to come back and learn from my dad and kind of learn the managing role so that whenever they pass it down, there can be that legacy built. And we kind of work and push into that while dad's still actively working, while my grandpa's still involved as well. And so that came with a stipulation, however. Grandpa has a rule that if you come back to the farm, you have to bring an enterprise because the farm in and of itself can't just sustain adding people back without adding either acres or enterprises or revenue stream. So that's kind of where we started, and we threw around some ideas, and I really jumped into the direct marketing portion of it. We were doing a couple of beef a year, just to family friends, when I came back. So it wasn't a big push. It was just kind of, we ate off the farm, and then some friends would buy some occasionally. We really sat down and pushed into that. What does our community need? Well, we realized a lot of people don't have the freezer space in our area or the income to buy in bulk, even though we still offer bulk sales. We divide everything down and started selling by the cut as well. So we can do small orders or larger orders. My youngest brother came back to the farm as well, and he brought laying hens and meat chickens. And then my middle brother does a guided deer hunts, whitetail hunts through the end of fall, basically through February. We have different crews of hunters coming in that stay on the farm. And so we're just really trying to add things that kind of work well together. So the habitat at the regenerative farm really pushes into the deer hunting there, as well as our cover crops and different things. So we really wanted to add things that complement each other. So I think at this point, we're running about 21 different enterprises off the farm. For everything from honey sales with bees to meat sales, small vegetable production, the deer hunting, that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we're at.
Well, I remember the first time I heard you describe what your family does, I just was blown away. I thought, wow, I thought I was busy. You and your family do some amazing things. So, you know, when you talked about stacking enterprises, you guys definitely do that to a new level. So your grandpa, I like this idea, and it's kind of foundation to what caused all this chaos, right? Is you have to bring an enterprise back. when you think about it, other neighbors of yours, that normally means if the kid's coming back, we got to go rent more acres for more corn and soybeans, right? I mean, they don't really think beyond their current production system that they're doing. Or if they're a hog
Right.
farm, oh, we need to get a couple more barns. Or if they're cattle, we need to, build another feed barn or something like that. So, what do you think? How did you know that to look at the enterprises that you've done with the direct versus just add more acres of what you were already doing?
We were really digging into. So when I came back, my dad had already started the ball rolling in this regenerative system. So we had already added the cover crops in and the grazing of the cover crops and things like that. And we were talking about things that one, it's hard to find ground to rent here unless you want to pay an arm and a leg. But a lot
Oh,
of
it's
those,
it's easy anywhere else, Lydia. I mean, people are just, the landlords are lining up for the farmers and saying, "Hey, would you please rent my ground?" Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. So there's that kind of as well. And we really started looking at vertical integration versus spreading it out because we're wanting to steward well. Stewarding well means using the resources you have well already. And so as we were looking at it, it's like, well, what can we add that to these resources, this ecosystem we're trying to build that enhances it and enhances the community aspect that we're building as well in terms of direct marketing, agritourism, and that kind of thing. So it really was a lot really fast because we weren't sure which direction we wanted to go. So we added a lot of enterprises in a short amount of time. The last year, we've really been trying to fine tune what's working, what's not, what needs to shift a little bit, just because it was a lot really fast. Um, but my grandpa's always said you have five things going. And that way, if one fails, another one will come through. And so as we were looking at things, was, what five things at first could we have that are giving us the opportunity to increase revenue? If one fails, then hopefully another one will cover that one. Is kind of how we started.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to list off the 21 eventually, but first off, I want to talk about the stewardship and your degree in um, looking to be a pastor, essentially. What does that mean to you? Can you dive into that a little bit for all of our listeners and what is that meaning of stewardship?
Sure, I can push into my degree first because my plan, I worked quite a lot in Honduras with a homeless ministry. And so I wasn't necessarily planning to be a pastor. I was planning to go teach at the bilingual school there
Yeah.
and work with a homeless ministry and feed people on the streets. So it really fits well in terms of what we're doing here because I'm still feeding my community. It's just my community is here.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of stewardship, I feel that we're called to steward well your resources, your finances, your land, your livestock. And so for me, that really looks like trying to build that cohesive ecosystem that's focused on community base. Because if as I'm looking at these different communities around, most of them are community based, whether it's microbes, whether it's plants, whether it's livestock, and all of them integrated together. But it also pushes into that the community you're feeding with these nutrient dense food products. Um, so that's kind of what it looks like to me. I'm feeding my community. We keep our prices really low. I live in a really low income area. So I actually went to one of the local schools to help. They're doing a communication program to where they're getting kids away from screens and teaching them to have one-on-one conversations with active community members. And so they're inviting different people with different jobs to come in and talk. And it was really eye-opening because as I'm talking to the teacher and she's explaining, they're asking these elementary school students what they want to be when they grow up. And there's a large number that don't have an answer because they don't know anyone that works in their family or the people that they're in direct contact with besides their teachers. So that's the environment that we're pushing into. So, yeah, we do not charge top dollar for our products. And I don't want to. I want to feed my community, and that's our goal. And when it comes to stewardship, I think that's really important for me to also consider not only stewarding the land well and the livestock well and the plants well and the soils well, but also the people I'm feeding well and making sure they have that opportunity.
And it kind of boils down to the understanding of ownership, where some people think it's I, me, mine, right? And the reality is we're just here for a short period of time, and it really wasn't ours to begin with, and it really won't be ours when we're gone, right? We're here to make the best of what God's given us.
Yeah, and we don't do everything perfect. We're still learning and making changes. But I think that's part of stewardship as well, is just continuing to push into how can we do this better? And what does that look like with all of the changes thrown at us?
Right. Yeah. Interesting. All right. So, for those taking notes at home and going to be ready for the quiz that Kim's going to put at the end of the podcast, we're going to go through 1 through 21, and this might be a challenge for you, Lydia,
Yeah, let
and
me
try
pull
to
up
try
my
to do it in the right
list.
order. So we're
You're
putting.
gonna,
I'm going to number them out. See if she wasn't just making this up here.
all
So,
right, you're gonna have to
all
give
right.
me a second to pull up my list.
Oh, that's cheating. Not. This isn't an open book test now.
Oh, well, fine then. We'll go right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just do it.
All
You
right.
can do it.
So we do traditional row crops. So we got corn, soy, wheat, sunflowers, as well as our heritage grains, which are, you can put them in one, but I'll list what we're currently growing. So we're growing spelt, rouge de Bordeaux, einkorn, blue claridge, open pollinated corn, silver king dent, open pollinated corn. I feel like I missed one in there.
Jimmy
Oh,
Red.
we did red five last year.
Okay.
So we can add that in. We also direct market our beef, pork, chicken, eggs, honey. I have an on-farm bakery license, so we direct market value-added products like I'm doing pies for Thanksgiving this week. We also do jams, jellies, things like that. We do produce production, so lots of different vegetables that we do seasonally. So we only do those when we can basically do outdoor growing. I don't have a functioning hothouse.
Hmm.
I have a greenhouse or like a hoop house that extends the growing season but isn't heated. Um, we do the deer hunting
Hmm.
for sure. So we started in agritourism. So we do farm to table events
Hmm.
through the summer. Started field trips this past year, and it is a phenomenal experience. We have a soybean roaster, so we can sell roasted beans. We've got a sunflower press. We can cold press the sunflowers and sell the oil. We have a perennial patch, so I've got raspberries, blackberries, apple trees, elderberries. I don't know what else I'm missing.
You also, I know you do a lot of the students, and this may not be considered farm enterprise, but a reading club with the students, or you do that
Yeah.
on a
Yep.
monthly basis,
So,
I believe.
yep. So during March, we do a read with your farmer. Um, and we don't charge anything for that. That's just to get moms the ability to come in and shop and their kids to get to read with me for an hour. So, I don't know if I really
That's
consider that.
well, it's part of the community, right? And
It
then,
is. It's
yep.
community building for sure.
What
I do
about?
get the
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I do get the chance to go into school some too, for a day or two and kind of bridge the
Mhm.
knowledge gap there and where food comes from.
And you mentioned that garden that you have. That's also the kids come to, and they can experience the
Yep.
farm and garden and get familiar with cosmetic products or anything from the beef
Yes.
tallow.
So my first cosmetic line is coming out next or this week. My labels came in today.
Oh
Um,
my,
so we're doing whipped tallow balms
nice.
for Christmas and some chapstick stuff made out of tallow is kind of the game plan there. So that's a new thing.
And will you do the
Um,
beeswax then also because the bees?
um, Possibly.
Okay.
I haven't really pushed too far into that.
Well, I mean, you got to have more to do here, Lydia. I
I
mean,
know.
and then also, I believe it's your sister-in-law does photography with the sunflowers.
Yep,
And
she sure does. So she runs her own photography business. So that's an enterprise that the farm is able to highlight and um, kind of provide the space to do, but
Mhm.
it's definitely her own business. So she
Right.
does the photography. She gets to use the farm for sessions. And then she also does all of our product photos, which is phenomenal. And all of, like, if I want to do a shoot, because I have some content planned for our marketing, she'll come and do that for me.
And if the people are there, they're there maybe for the first time, they see it, or they're there and they
Yeah.
stop by the store and get some of your products. So I mean, all of that,
Yeah.
the synergy of all that working together is interesting.
Yeah. And we've got a farm cookbook. We've got t-shirts and
Right.
mugs that are locally made. So
Mhm.
we really try to push into that local business as much as we can.
You mentioned the farm to table dinners, but this isn't your average farm to table dinner where you hire the caterer and they do some token steak from your place and buy everything else from the grocery store. Okay. You got to describe your farm to table. See, okay, everyone, you heard her rattle all this stuff off, but this isn't just surface level things. So we're going to dive into the farm to table dinner. Who cooks it? Where does all the produce come from? And where does all the meat come from?
Okay, so the farm to tables came out of a way that my mom could really showcase cooking, which is what she loves to do. And so we do two different types of farm to table dinners. So the first one is we cater ahead of time, and then those are idea specific or topic specific. So like we do a heritage grain night, which the millers that mill our heritage grains come and they get to talk about the milling process. We eat a meal primarily made of
Carbs.
things made from yeah, things made from
This
the
this
flours and
this is not
different
your
breads.
it's
We
not a
still
keto
provide
meal.
Right, we still provide the protein and some
Right.
greens from the farm. So salad usually from the farm as well as green beans, some type of protein, whether it's roast or brisket, also from the farm. We prepare that ahead of time. We eat together family style. We go out and we tour the wheat fields so that they can see how we're growing the grains that we're talking about, our growing practices. They get to ask us whatever questions come to mind, essentially, while we're out there. They get to really get involved with how the food's being grown and the way we're doing it. Allows that transparency from us to them and them to us. And then the millers talk, and we still do a farm tour with those. The second type we do, which I think is what you're pushing into, is more of a cooking class. So when we started down this journey, we realized there's a real knowledge gap in how to prepare foods with whole ingredients in my area.
It's glad it's just in Southwest Ohio or Southeast Ohio. It's not anywhere else. It's just in Southeast Ohio. People have forgotten to cook. But
Yeah, so we
well, this
kept
is
getting
this is awesome how
questions.
you do this.
Yeah, so we got questions, how do you do a whole chicken? What do you do with this? So we started developing these farm to table dinners that showcase how to prepare meals. So each weekend is a completely different menu. It's all seasonally based. So we're eating what's coming off from the gardens with the meats. Usually the meats, we do the whole chicken ahead of time, but we talk through the process.
Mhm.
And then we usually do like a roast or brisket or some other protein for the main meal. We do those ahead of time, but we talk them through what we do. When people arrive at our barn, I guess I should say, they get an apron, they get a cutting board, they get a knife, and we all circle around our island. I'm blessed with a 14-foot island, so we can fit about 10 to 12 people at a time, and that's what we cap these at, just because that's what fits comfortably. And then my mom creates the menu. It's usually 16 to 20 different dishes created off that seasonal produce and meats. So that we do let them sample steaks. Everyone doesn't get a steak. We make a steak using a cast iron skillet. We make a steak in the air fryer to give them different options of how to cook
Mhm.
steaks. And they get to try a bite of each or a couple bites of each and compare the taste and flavor. We always do a soup of some kind as an appetizer. We usually do a couple different pizzas as appetizers. We do stuffed peppers, um, 16 to 20 different dishes is probably the best way I can encompass that.
You
um,
want to keep the dishes less than your enterprises.
I guess so. It's whatever mom feels like. And if she wants to throw one in last minute, she just does. It's really the time that she gets to be creative. And that's why we have the farm cookbook, because customers were asking for these recipes and she had to sit down and figure out exactly what goes into each one.
Who needs a recipe? Just do it, right?
Yeah. And so then after we cook, we eat together family style. And then the first piece of farm equipment that I personally bought was a people hauler wagon because I wanted to bring people to the farm. So our farm store is about 2 miles from where the main operation happens. And so we wagon ride down to the farm, and each tour is different. We've not done one where they're the same yet. And one year we did 18 of these. This past year, I think we did 10. Um, but we wagon ride, and dad drives a tractor. We stop, and he and I get to talk about what we're doing, why we're doing it, how it looks. And we show the mistakes we make and the things that might be working well because we want to be transparent and like we don't do everything perfect, but we're trying. Come and see, come and learn. Take an active role in where your food comes from. It's kind of the route that we take with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, those dinners are a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea that you're certainly willing. It's not patented, it's not copyrighted. Lydia would encourage you to do that at
Oh,
your
please
farm for
try
sure.
it.
Because
It's a lot
here's
of work.
yeah, it's a lot of work for sure. But what's interesting is you've equipped them to fish, for the future. And then the other thing is they have a relationship with you now, and they become lifelong customers. And you know, you have to have the sales to make the farm work. And that all comes together. Now you mentioned briefly about your planting your spelt, the Bordeaux Rouge, the einkorn, the blue claridge. I think you have Jimmy Red or may have had all these and spelt if I didn't say it already. Not only do you grow them, and you also mill them, and you mill them to different sizes and specs for different end use customers. Talk about that a little bit, what you and Jay are doing there, and kind of how that journey and why you do that, the value added when you do those things.
Yeah, so our family is part of a local grain hub that was started by Jay and Dave Brandt. And so we were already growing spelt to put into our livestock feed. That's kind of how we got put in right off because we were already growing it.
Okay.
um, and we're willing to try a lot of different things. And I have a few acres I play with every year. And so it's just kind of grown out of that in terms of which varieties we're growing. Um, but I don't actually have to mill, which is great. I have enough hats, enough jobs. So the way it kind of works is we grill for the grain hub and they purchase the grains and then they mill it. And then they can sell to their customers. I can buy it back wholesale and sell to my customers. The way they're marketing it is really cool because on the back of the packages, it has a QR code that the person that buys the 2 pound bag of flour can go directly to the farmer's site where that grain was grown. So it's really bridging that gap of farmer to consumer with the miller in between. So you're getting all steps of that production of that grain. Um, so for us, it's really neat as a farmer to be able to sell our grains because we've been selling our meats for a while. You sell your vegetables, you hear a lot about support local. There's not really been a huge movement until recently for a local grain movement. And so our grain hub is really pushing into that. So I know they partner with several different bakeries. I know they partner with several breweries, several tortilla makers. Now, I don't have the list of everyone that uses our product, and honestly, I don't need it. They do a great job. And I can get what I need to sell to our customers as well. And we're just thankful to be part of that story and helping bridge that gap.
So just for some of the numbers behind it, and if you can't share, please don't, but let me know. Um, okay, if I grow hard red or soft red winter wheat, and I can take it to ADM up in Rochelle, and I can sell it to them for $5.50 a bushel if I do everything right, don't have vomitoxin, or they don't mysteriously find it because they got too much wheat, whatever the story is there. And then you get 80 to 100 bushel of that, and you go broke raising wheat. Um, what is that price difference just going to these heritage? I realize you give up some yield, there's some management considerations and those kind of things, but you're looking at a significant difference in the price per bushel. But then when you run it through a mill, you're almost 10xing the value of that end product. Um, I realize you can't necessarily sell every acre of what you grow, but kind of walk through some of the economics on that, or an example like that of how this going with a specialty product and processing it up to an end user state, what that means for a farm.
So for a farm, you go from, instead of selling by the bushel to by the pound, especially if you're doing small sales, right? So, I mean, I don't have the specific numbers in front of me. I didn't know we were going down this
Oh,
rabbit
that's fine.
hole. Um,
Hey, neither did I. It's just fun.
yeah, it's okay. And so we'll take it this way. Like I sell right now a 2 pound bag of spelt flour for $8 a bag
Okay. And I
versus
don't know what spelt sells for, but I'm assuming that.
it's comparable to wheat.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Oh,
yeah.
there you go.
So we'll go with einkorn wheat because you know what wheat sells for.
Hmm.
So a 2 pound bag of einkorn wheat is $8 a bag.
There you go. So,
Yeah,
so what a person would sell by the bushel, you're typically selling for by the pound.
correct.
The math can work out on that. It's just a matter if you can sell enough. So,
Yeah.
you need to have more dinners to where you make more breads and pastas to where you can sell more, Lydia.
The AgEmerge podcast is brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. The ASN team is hands-on, digging in and invested in regenerative agriculture. Along with the proper plant nutrition and biologicals to boost your soil microbiome, we provide the ideas and implementation guidance to support you on your soil health journey. So stop farming the same way and contact Ag Solutions Network today at asn.farm.
Okay, so out of all these enterprises, and like you said, now you've done all of them long enough, you're kind of reevaluating, right? There's in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, there's the concept of, you throw stuff against the wall, see what's going to stick, what takes, what do customers want, what's that feedback loop. What are some of the areas that you're most excited about that provide? It's not just for you about profitability, but which one services your community the best, services your farm the best, and really creates that overall synergy you're looking for in your mind.
I love the protein sales, but I would say, I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint, right?
Hmm.
So like I love the education part as well because it ties everything together.
Hmm.
Um, we charge per kid for kids to come on a field trip, so we're getting paid for our time. They would pay what, $25 to go to COSI in Columbus to a
Okay.
science learning center.
Hmm.
So and when we kind of factored in, it's like, okay, well, what do I need per kid to devote an entire day with six different people or seven or eight or however many I've got there running different stations for these kids. What do I have to make it worth the time? But then you look at the compounding effect of that because I really think that if we're looking to push deeper into this and expand, I really think kids are going to be the ones that do it. I mean, that next generation and bridging that gap because I know for here, they're 2 and 3 generations removed from anyone farming in their family or growing their own food. So there's not a knowledge there of like, not even how my food is grown, but my food doesn't come from the grocery store, right? It doesn't just magically appear there. Um, and so through the education, we're able to kind of talk through, this is where your food comes from. You want a cookie at the store? Came from this wheat plant, right? Flour.
Hmm.
There's a process to get there. And so for us kind of pushing into that has been a real game changer. And I'm gonna push in a little further, I think, this coming year. Now the deer hunting is great because it's a whole different ballpark of people that we're talking to. I get to talk farming when they're eating dinner at my table that I make from farm products. Like whether they want to listen or not, they're going to because it's in my kitchen. uh, but it really opens the door to a lot of cool conversations and things based on they get the habitat and they get the wildlife and the conservation side. And this kind of bridges more of that gap of like cover crops to actually provide food for your deer you're coming to kill. I don't need to put in a million food plots when I've got a diverse cover mix in that the deer can eat.
Hmm. Your whole
And so I
farm's a
guess
food plot.
yeah, so it's kind of hard. It's hard to narrow down like which one is the winning thing,
Hmm.
especially coming out of the year we've had. We came out of a D4 drought. to get hit by a hurricane. uh, Not great growing conditions for us. It's been a really tough year farming wise. But through the resiliency of the program that we're implementing, we're not going broke and we get to farm next year. Right?
That's what it's all about. So when you came back and you kind of helped out with the meat business that your dad had started and such, let's talk about your dad. Did your dad see it going this wild, or did he want it to go this wild?
I don't know if he saw it coming or if he just gets excited to let
He
us run
enjoys
and
it,
try
doesn't
things. Oh yeah.
he? Yeah.
He likes experimenting, he likes learning himself. I mean, he's the one that sparked that in all of his kids, myself and my brothers. We're all watching YouTube videos, watching podcasts, listening to books. I'm an avid reader, but they listen because they're not they don't like to sit and read, but they like to listen to the books.
Yeah.
um, and so I think really that the opportunity to experiment and that there's joy in that and that it's okay if it doesn't work. You're not going to experiment on the whole farm. You're going to experiment on a little bit first, right?
Mhm.
Um, and if it doesn't work, that's okay because you still learned something. And it could have been the weather we had. It could have been all outside factors that made it not work that season.
Okay.
Um,
Let's talk about that. Like you said, D4 drought. The last time it rained was when I visited, I think.
uh, no, it would be it quit raining the 20th of May and it didn't rain much, maybe an inch all growing season until the end of September.
But you learned some amazing things through that, didn't you?
Yeah, that was
Far
not
as
fun, but
resilient, I meant the resiliency of your
oh,
crops on
absolutely.
your systems. Share a little
Yeah.
bit about what you observed there.
So, one we had planted on July 4th. We came in after our heritage wheat and everything was harvested and put in a diverse cover mix. So we did some that we intentionally put in as a grazing mix because it hadn't rained and we were looking at more dry weather. And I knew our pastures were going to need a break. We're going to run out of feed and we're going to have to feed hay. And I didn't want to have to do that in July or August. Um, so we put in, instead of doing full production sunflowers on all of our wheat ground, we did full production sunflowers in a cover mix on 80 acres. And the other 80 acres, I put in a diverse grazing mix with the intent just to graze. I put sunflowers in, but I didn't put the high numbers.
Hmm.
Um, we didn't have to feed hay. We went straight from pasture to that diverse cover mix. Uh, I do not know another cattle farmer around us that was not feeding hay through that.
Hmm.
Um, and we were getting the biological life back on the row crop field, which is a win-win for me.
Plus, you've
Uh,
done things before with your sunflowers where you plant sunflowers with the cover mix and then harvest the sunflowers off because they're above the canopy for your
yeah, that's
sunflower
what
oil. And I mean,
correct. That's what I meant by my production. So my production sunflowers are still
yep,
in that mix.
right.
I just don't graze them until after we harvest the sunflowers.
And you just
Uh,
basically drive the combine and harvest over top the lower
yes.
stature cover crops, and then you can come in and graze or possibly hay that if you needed to
Yeah. So
after.
this year we're going to harvest the sunflowers and oats together because the oats are tall enough and we'll clean them out. So we'll get two crops out of the one
Hmm.
for a um, cash crop, I guess you would say. And we'll still graze it underneath.
So you'll
I've got
get
electric.
regrowth. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And worst case scenario is if I want to bale graze, that's where I'll bale graze because there's residue. Um, but it's still pretty green. The turnips and the radishes and everything are the deer are hammering them right now because we haven't picked the sunflowers yet. But
At
um,
least, at least you're some farmer that gets paid for deer eating your crops. You see, this this
yeah,
is
right.
this is a good integration. I see so many farmers complaining about deer damage and showing their yield monitor map and like, oh, look at all my deer damage. And I'm just thinking about you, thinking, how many more hunters could we have at the lodge?
Yep, yep. It's a nice like they complement each other well. Um, and it's community, right? Even the deer are involved in our community. um, we get paid for them and they get to eat our stuff. But yeah, let me think. So when I look at the resiliency of the open pollinated corn, it's incredible. So yes, the hurricane winds did flatten it, and that sucked. But before the hurricane came, I had a yield of corn um, that I was pretty proud of. I had ears as big as my arm. Yes, not every stalk had them, but they were still 14 foot tall.
Mhm.
green. I didn't have to put the fertility down. Whereas all of my hybrid corn burn up pretty quick.
Hmm.
um, we're farming sandy river bottom ground to give you kind of our soil type. So when we turn off dry, we're dry. um,
Yeah, it's interesting on the open pollinated corn. I mean, the protein differences, the disease tolerance, the drought tolerance differences. Um, I wonder what could happen if the billions upon billions of dollars of research that was put into hybrids could have been put into OP. What would happen? But um, who knows? So of the so let's say we've got people that are interested in retaining more of those dollars for their farm and for their community, um, on the crops that they're growing. Where when you talk to a lot of farmers, where do you think some good places for them to look to start? Um, just I assume you'd say, oh yeah, just start with all 21 of these first year. It's going to be great. But let's say what are some of the things you've seen that is successful for people to start with as they want to retain more of their own dollars on their farm?
so for us, it's community based,
Hmm.
right? Everything's community based. So you start with your community, whether that's feeding proteins and livestock, or I know farmers. So there's a farmer to farmer community out there as well. It's networking. Um, for us, that's essential. I didn't really hit on this, but for our farm to table dinners, the staff there is full volunteer, um, because they believe in who we are as their farmers. They believe in our story, they believe in our products, and they want to be a part of it, whatever that looks like, whether that's washing dishes for an entire evening or buying a meal or sharing their story. We partner with an older couple that does a herd share, um, and pushes into the raw milk side of things. And they get to kind of share their story and why they're doing what they're doing at our events.
Hmm.
Um, so I would say look at your community and start there.
Hmm.
Also, find something you really enjoy because you don't want to hate what you're doing every day. It's not fun. So, a lot of the things we've added really pour into us as well. My middle brother loves deer hunting. Absolutely. He's great at it. He's great at finding deer. He's great at guiding. He tolerates the farm. It's not his favorite thing. But by stacking enterprises, we're able to utilize his strengths and let him have ownership and a part of that dream too. So I think it's really looking at what you enjoy and what works well for your family.
Hmm. Yeah, be take a real hard look at that and see what everybody's good at and pursue it from there.
Yeah.
Uh, Great advice. Great advice. So what's next on the horizon? What do you see happening as the farm continues to develop over time?
Well, this next year, we're still going to work at getting more efficient in what we've got going. There are some efficiency problems that need some work, and that's kind of the main goal for the next year. Past that, we're going to have a commercial kitchen on the farm. I'm sure of it within the next 5 to 10 years. I already have a bakery license, but something I've really noticed is a lot of our customers want that finished product. With the speed of the culture today, of like they've got sporting events, they've got work, they're running all over the place. It's not necessarily that they don't want to buy from us, it's that they don't have the time to prepare the whole ingredients in their busy lives. And so if we could have a meal prep service or something like that on the farm, which is more of like I need a commercial kitchen in Ohio to be able to do that. So I'm looking at that. Um, I think we'll push more into the education part. I really want our farm to be a place of joy in the community, which the sunflowers help with that. Um, but for kids as well as adults. And so I'm sure we'll push more into events in terms of inviting the community in more. We do a lot now, but there's room to push more into that as well. My dad hates it because I do all the field trips during planning time, um, because that's when it works for the schools. Um, but they indulge me in my madness, and I set it all up and they just have to show up for one day.
You're
So
just
they can sacrifice one day for a group of 150 kids to come and enjoy the farm.
you're just trying to
Um,
get out of the tractors all you're doing.
yeah. So I really think that it's just going to be more community based in terms of what we're doing and however we can pour in and fit that to work with the ecosystem we have going now.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. A lot of farmers would stop a day of planting to do that. That's not normal. So congratulations to your family for doing that. To see kind of that higher calling that you're living up to. So yeah. What's some of the aha moments or feedback that you've had from those kids or families that just maybe took you back you never would have considered?
So I've got several I jotted down kind of
Yeah.
that stuck with me. And so the first one would be probably the first field trip we had. So we had never done one. And I had a teacher reach out to me and ask me to put one together based on her STEM program, science, technology, engineering, math, and how farming relates to all of that.
Hmm.
And she was adamant that they wanted to eat from the farm. And so we catered a meal. We got chuck roast, green beans, homemade noodles made from the heritage flours, and cookies. I mean, a good meal for the kids. And it was a pretty day. So I set up all these folding tables and chairs out alongside the pasture, and we're eating by the cows. So they eat their lunch, and then we start off, explaining what we're doing, and we get to have the really cool conversation when one little one raises his hand and he says, "So are we eating these cows, kids?" And so I get to really dive into what it looks like to have livestock have a good life, but also fulfill its purpose in feeding us as humans and really push into that. They have a really good life on our farm. Look at the cows. Do they look stressed? Do they look upset? No, they're just out there grazing, right? They have a bad day at the butcher and then they're fulfilling their purpose through that. And that's the ultimate goal. You can't just have all these cows as pets. That's not financially in the books for most people. And so that was a really cool experience of just pushing into that, like, they're fulfilling a purpose and speaking into that knowledge sharing. I've also had one of my favorites is one of our lifelong customers, she'll send me funny texts occasionally about things her kids say. And the last one I got, they went to eat at grandma's house and she made pork ribs, and the children refused to eat because they didn't know where those pigs came from. And she couldn't tell them. And so uh, that's just kind of a funny of like this mom's like, guess what? My kids went at their grandma today, and they wanted to know where their food came from, and she couldn't tell them, so they wouldn't eat it. Um,
Well, grandma better be a customer now.
yeah, the kids are taking an active role in where their food comes from, and I can't ask for more than that. I guess my third and final light bulb moment is every year for our farm to tables, I have a group of doctors from the local hospital come.
Mhm.
Uh, they've heard the farm tour every year now, but they come back every year because they support the way we're growing food um, for their patients. And they want to ask us questions about why we're doing what we're doing and what it looks like. And it's always such good conversation. But the fact that they're willing to open the door and come have the conversation is super meaningful to me. Um,
Yeah, I think they doctors truly do care about the patients,
yeah,
and I think if you give them the information they need, I just think there's a lack of information. You don't when they got pharmaceutical reps coming in their door all day long, you know, where's the farmers coming in their door all day long? We're being out competed with airtime, if you will.
yeah.
So
And I think it says something that they're coming to us. They're paying to come have a meal and learn.
yeah, interesting. I can't imagine the looks on the parents' faces when the little kid said, "Are we eating that cow's kid?" You know,
Oh,
they had to be, the parents had to be like, "Oh no."
I mean, we're an open book, it's about coming and seeing and asking the hard questions. Um,
And when kids don't grow up on farms, right? They just don't see that cycle of life, and we have
yeah,
such a disconnect.
yep.
So you're not afraid of the tough questions. That sounds like, right?
They usually lead to good conversation.
So Okay, so day in, day out, another one of the questions I had for you is just where are those continual challenges that you face? I would have to think time is
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it all, but what are some of the other challenges that you see affecting, your farm, your team?
Well, I'm convinced that farming is just a compilation of challenges that you overcome year after year, whether it's weather or time management or customers that don't ask the questions in a way that make you feel like you did your job well.
Hmm.
I mean, there are some times I get questions and, I got to take a minute. I'm not going to shoot back my reply of like, well, how is this any better than what I'm buying? And it's asked in that tone. Well, I'm going to take a minute before we have this conversation because I want to approach this in a way that is respectful because it's probably not meant as an attack, even though I can take it that way sometimes. Uh, and I think giving myself the grace to take the time, but also them the grace of just not knowing and not knowing how to ask the question because I'd much rather them ask the question and me have to take a minute to come up with a response than them just not ask it.
Yeah, I
But
get.
time management is huge. That you hit that one nail on the head of like I time block a lot. Um, I have a morning routine and an evening routine that set me up. I close my day a certain way. It sets me up for success the next day. And personally, that's where I'm at with that. If I don't do that, I'm struggling the next day.
There you go. I see it now. Instead of Joel Salatin became famous with Pastured Poultry Profits, the book. Yours is going to be time management and time blocking in a 21 crop enterprise.
Oh my gosh.
There you go. That could be your first book. Um, so working with customers is interesting. I love we got all the information on our farm website on where the beet comes from, all, videos, the whole works. And then invariably you get somebody on social media asks a question directly on Messenger. It's like, have you even been to the website? Have you even tried to look for anything at all? People are interesting, aren't they? And the
Yeah,
funny part is they expect that of us where they wouldn't expect that of a grocery store. They would just walk
correct.
in and, oh, okay, well, I'm going to buy some random thing. I don't know what it is and not going to ask anybody any questions because you can't find anybody. And anyway, but what are some other things you've learned about direct marketing and that you've just had to kind of handle uh, on the fly or in process there?
I mean, honestly, all of it. I have no background in marketing. Zero. Uh, I am I'm an avid researcher and learner, and so I look and see what other people are doing, and maybe this nugget will fit with ours, maybe it won't. Um, just how to be,
Okay, so why did hold it?
yeah.
Why didn't that stop you? You don't have any background in marketing, don't know anything about it. Most people, most farmers especially, it's something different. They would just say, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." Why? Why did you power through? How would you encourage another farmer to think differently? What's that? What's that thing that inspired you to go that way?
You ask hard questions. I don't know that it was any one thing.
Because I want what caused you to do what you did to rub off on somebody. That's why I asked this hard question.
I don't know. I mean, we're excited about what we were doing. So I was excited to start sharing
Hmm.
what we were doing. So a lot of it started with social media.
Hmm.
Um,
Check out their Instagram. Amazing pictures, photos, cool stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
so I guess like our big jump happened in COVID. Everyone was stuck at home. I was working a full-time off the farm job that was then work from home. Um, and our sales jumped because the food system around us kind of collapsed. So I was scheduling pickups and having people drive by and pick up that way. And so it was really just looking and saying we had the opportunity. It was whether we wanted to jump on it or not and push into it.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, at this point, I find the marketing fun. I've also been extremely blessed to surround myself with people that are much smarter than I am, and I like to ask questions. So I've really had several mentors that have helped. Well, what about this? Well, let's try this. Or have you thought about this? I'm also in a group of women entrepreneurs that it's called Cowgirls Over Coffee, and it's all rural women um, that are either entrepreneurs, ranch wives, somehow related to agriculture, or they love it. And I pay for that membership, but I get to meet with those women and pick their brains often. We do a map your month, and you kind of pre-plan your month, which helps with figuring out what you want to do. They also have a business track. So like for marketing, you could push into that if you wanted. I haven't done it because honestly, I don't have the time to devote to put into more calls. um, but I think surrounding yourself with a good team and people that are either doing it or um, you can find those entrepreneur minded people, even if they're not necessarily doing it themselves at that time. They might have done it in the past. And you can learn something from every conversation. It's just whether you're looking for that nugget to learn or if you're looking for just a talking point or whatever. It just depends on how you approach the conversation. I approach conversations and things like that. Like I want to glean that nugget of information that's going to help me on my journey. Yeah, they might not be doing a lot of stuff that I agree with, but they might have that one thing that can push us a little further and might work in what we're doing. So I guess that's kind of how we pushed into it. And when you're excited and passionate about what you're doing, for me, it's a natural step that I want to share it. I want to educate. I want to build that community. And that probably comes back from my ministry viewpoint of community. That's the center of it. Um, whether it's ministry, whether it's a functioning ecosystem, it's community. And that's what direct marketing is. It's connecting with your community.
Hmm. Excellent. So tell me, 10 years from now, what's this all going to look like? Paint a picture of your day 10 years from now.
I have absolutely no idea.
Okay.
um,
What would you like it to look like 10 years from now?
so I hope that we're a place of joy and a place of solace and a place of hope in our community. I hope it looks like people coming out to the farm to enjoy the beauty of the sunflowers or the wheat crop or the flowers from in our native grasses. I hope it looks like us providing nutrient dense food in a way that's building our soil. Um, we've made some good soil strides, but again, it's a work in progress. We're not there. I don't know that there is a there to get to, but we can always do better. Um, so I hope we're doing better. Um, I hope our animals are living good lives and fulfilling their purpose. Um, I hope I get to highlight my brother's strengths in what we're doing. I hope that I get to highlight my niece's strength as my niece is 2 months old. So in 10 years, hopefully she'll have an active role in
She'll
hanging
have
out with the chickens.
she'll have 5 enterprises by then.
Now, who knows?
She
Um,
should.
I hope that we're filling the need of those in our community because we're surrounded by homesteaders. I hope that when they have a bad year and maybe our stuff produces, we can fill that void they have in their cabinets um, or on their tables. I hope that I'm building relationship with farmers and we're all in this together. It's not me against your farm. It's how can we do this better together? And I hope that that relationship is still growing because I mean I've met some awesome farmers on my journey so far. Um, they're pretty cool people, doing some really incredible things, and I really want my day to look like pouring into them, um, and expanding that community.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know um, speaking in front of a large group of farmers is what you aspired to do all of your life.
It is terrifying.
And you've powered through that too. And talk to me about the impact you've made with other farmers that you're aware of. And I'm sure there's a lot of impact that you're not aware of.
I don't know that it's impact so much as a relationship. It's a symbiotic relationship. I'm not out there telling people how to farm. That's not my personality.
Mhm.
I'll share our story. You can take what you want from it. I want to hear what you're doing. I want to hear your dreams, the things that you think are going to work on your farm. Um, so I mean, I guess I don't really know the impact, but I haven't really went in search of it because I want those symbiotic relationships. I don't want it to be one way, me telling people what to do because I'm not even 30 yet. I still have a lot to learn. Like I don't ever want to be the person that tells people this is how you have to do it.
Mhm.
I want to share what we're doing and the success we've had and why we're doing what we're doing. And they can take what they want from it to implement. And that's kind of the way that I push into that.
Well, I'm going to share with you how it impacted me. Um, First off, being able to visit your farm was wonderful. I thank you for hosting me. Um, but it allowed us to think about the community dinner thing. These things aren't in place, but they're certainly priming the pump for how will this work. Also about how non-family can be involved in our farm and have enterprises off of our farm and enterprises of synergy. How what are we going to do when Robin and I are no longer here? How are we going to allow the land that we have to be available for others to benefit from and be able to continue it farming in a way that is helpful for the environment and for the community versus just okay, let's go back to commodity agriculture. So a lot of those things and just seeing all that you're doing really inspired me to think of okay, how much more can we do? How can we stack enterprises? We're looking at coming out with our own seed brand here this coming year, cover crop seed for sale. We're looking into partnering with someone for doing our milling, much like you are, and specialty crops. So hey, I hadn't thought of all that stuff before I heard you talk, and then I thought, man, I am behind. I got to catch up here. So, see, I'm just one guy, and I'm sure there's several others that you've given ideas, and that's what we hope out of this podcast is that people can hear other farmers such as yourself, you and your dad, doing what you're doing, and your brothers, and can come up with just hey, there's more that I can do. There's more than just corn and beans or cotton or wheat or almonds. There's things that we can do, uh, to uh, make farming more fun, right? Make it more resilient, make it more community engaging versus just growing a commodity, getting a check, and hope the math works, right? So I want to thank you. I really do. I thank you for stepping outside your shell and doing the speaking engagement, which you've told me how much you love in the past. So
uh, you know, there are some things you think you'll never do in life because you have no desire to, and then someone asks a favor of you, and somehow you end up sharing your story. Um,
yep,
and
more than
it's
once.
yeah, more than once.
Well, thank you for doing that. Boy, time's flown by here quickly while we've been visiting. What else should we have covered today, Lydia, that we didn't get a chance to visit about?
I don't know. We hit on a lot of good things.
Well, you're doing a lot of good things. So, but no, I tell you what, keep up the great work, and hope that you get out of your D4 drought, but don't go into a flood. Um, but
Hey, we're getting rain today, so that's
there you go.
we're getting rain.
We're getting our first dusting of snow here today, so we got time released rain. Uh, but I want to thank you for all that you and your family are doing and the leadership that you're bringing there. And it's really neat to hear how uh, your approach to taking care of the community is that's unique, and it shouldn't be, but it is today. And I think having that community minded approach really changes how you do things.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, even though you had to twist my arm to get me on here because this is not my favorite thing to do because
It
I get
wasn't
super
too pain.
nervous.
It wasn't too painful, was it?
No, it was fine. It was good. It's more me overcoming my nerves.
There you go.
But I really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to share, just because I wouldn't be where I was, where we are, without people sharing their story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, Lydia, you have a wonderful holiday season here, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and I'm sure we'll bump into each other at some soil health conference somewhere again.
I'm sure.
All right. Take care.
What a great conversation with Lydia. Her story reminds us of the endless possibilities that arise when creativity and purpose are at the center of farming. From raising resilient crops in challenging conditions to hosting farm-to-table dinners and educational field trips, Lydia and her family exemplify what it means to truly serve their community. We hope you've been inspired to think outside the box about your own agricultural ventures, whether it's embracing regenerative practices, exploring direct marketing, or fostering meaningful relationships with your community. Thank you for joining us on this journey of innovation and connection. Be sure to subscribe to the AgEmerge podcast for more inspiring stories like Lydia's. And if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing, you can visit our website at asn.farm, and there you can click on links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. There's a lot of great things happening and always something to learn.